This video discusses the reality of Santa as a person and Christmas character. You may not want your young children to watch.
Hey man, how's it going?
Good. How are you doing?
Doing all right. This is crazy. It's probably been like 2 months, I think, since we've done one of these together. So
Yeah. You've had a lot going on. I've got stuff, but yeah, time goes pretty quick.
it is the busy season being the Christmas season. If you're watching this, it's a Christmas episode. So welcome to OTXNT.
Yes, we are back. For those that were just on the edge of their seats saying, where are Old Testament, New Testament guys? Oh man. Oh man.
Yes, I'm going to go festive today with Christmas light. I keep blowing fuses in my backyard, by the way,
Oh no.
with my lights. So I think a lot of rain out here. Never had that problem in Arizona.
Nope.
No rain at winter. So,
Mm, Yeah,
well,
it's golfing season right now. It's like 70 degrees.
beautiful weather.
Yeah.
No drones above the golf courses there, apparently. If you're
Yeah.
watching this in 2024, there's a weird thing. We're not going to get into the drones. What are they? But there are drones all on the East Coast, and we don't know what they are, apparently. So maybe we will know when we watch this in a year, 2 years from now.
Yeah, Christmas at Ground Zero. Maybe it's the lost nuclear arsenal. We'll have to
Maybe.
find out.
Well, so what's our topic for today,
Well,
Doctor?
as you all can see, I've got Father Christmas over here, and you've got Father Christmas in the corner there,
This
and
is my Duck Dynasty.
that's
Happy Merry Christmas one that stays here.
so. Yeah, I thought let's talk about Santa Claus, and is it something that should evangelicals, should Christians celebrate Santa? You got your hardliners that say, hey, you're bringing in all kinds of things that distract from Jesus, and you got a kind of a moderating view, and then you got the group that just says you guys are all uptight. Just Santa's fun, deal with it. So I don't know. It'd be kind of a fun thing.
I do like that. Let's do it. Let's hop into it and we'll probably offend everybody based on where we land on stuff. So it's gonna be fine. It's gonna be
Yeah.
okay.
Well, let's pray, and then we'll just have a chat. Right.
Let's do it.
All right. If you'll join me, our Father who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. Thy kingdom come, thy will be done on earth as it is in heaven. Give us this day our daily bread, and forgive us our trespasses as we forgive those who trespass against us. And lead us not into temptation, but deliver us from evil. For thine is the kingdom and the power and the glory forever and ever. Amen.
Amen. All right. So what do you do, man? What's your practice? Santa, what do you do?
Yeah, so I am one of those kids that really struggled with fear of dying and going to hell, from an early age. I'm a little bit strange. I think everybody struggles with that at some point in time, but I had a really early issues with it, and so I was really concerned. And one of the things as a kid I noticed is my parents really believed in Jesus, but we did the Easter Bunny and we did Santa Claus, and when I found out that they weren't real in the sense that they were presented, it did make me think. I really had the question: if my parents are not telling me the truth about the Easter Bunny and Santa Claus, are they telling me the truth about Jesus?
Oh,
So I know that there's people like, no kid ever thinks that way. No, I was actually a kid who thought that way. And so, it is one of those things that, as a parent, I was concerned about how do we do this, because Santa is fun. At the end of the day, it is fun. And in my household, we do, in fact, have gifts from Santa on Christmas Day. And so, am I the ultimate hypocrite? I've tried to address it in a different way than my parents did. So I'll be happy to talk about that. But we do it, and we have Elf on the Shelf, which I think is a whole nother
you do Elf
level
on the
of
Shelf?
paganism.
Huh?
So, um, yeah, I don't know. What do you think? What do you do?
Well, I don't do Santa. I mean, like I do little like gifts that say like from Santa or whatnot. I don't know. I made a conscious effort to like say we're not going to teach the kids about Santa. Like I don't care if they believe, but and I'm not going to crush that. But I did make a like when they got a little older, I just said, hey, we're not doing Santa. And here's my reason. Man, I didn't realize these lights are hot. This is not LED. It's like they have
Yeah,
little
the old
neck
school.
dots. So
Yeah,
this is I've
yeah.
had this for years. Um, but so my thought was I look and I just think that Christmas has been completely hijacked. Um, like nothing is about Jesus. It's all about Santa. Like I even sat there like, okay, this is how I think, right? Like I went to the mall the other day. My kids, we're not going to pay for pictures with Santa, but my kids, of course, the youngest ones are like, I want to tell Santa what I want, because they still
Mhm.
believe, even though their siblings have told like, hey, there is no Santa. They're like, no, he's real. And so we're like, whatever. And so we're gonna let them go talk with him. And I'm looking, I'm like, man, here's how I perceive it. Now, some people be like, dude, you need to chill, but that's cool. Like, I'm like, here he is. He's sitting on a throne. People all come before him. They tell him what they want. He grants their wishes. And that's it. Like, we put our pictures about him and all that stuff. So I don't know. I just convictionally, I have kind of come to the place where I'm like, he has been put as the emphasis upon everything. And I don't like it. I'd rather have something else. Let me tell you something else that's changed in my mind too. When I started studying Old Testament feast days, and I started looking at like how they are celebrated. This is the place that like I think really changed my view on a lot of stuff. So like Hanukkah starts on the 25th this year, and we're going to celebrate at least we'll do one day of Hanukkah. We don't do the full 8 days. We'll do at least one, and we'll celebrate it because it's a significant event for the church. It should be for the church. It's the intertestamental period, significant to the Old Testament people and the New. And but anyways, all that to say is like when you start to look at like things like uh for Purim, if you look at Hanukkah, if you look at Passover, all these feasts that we see people celebrating in the Bible, um, there are there are elements to how they celebrate these days, these weeks, right? That the things that they do tie to the story. And I think one of the things that just kind of stuck with me as I started doing more of that, just looking into it and teaching on those, I'm like, what about my Christmas story is what about how we celebrate Christmas do we tie to the story? And so, like, I don't know. I think I just became more convinced that, like, the foods that we do, we don't really tie to the story. That if we don't even really talk about, like, we might put a manger up, but like, in a stable nativity scene. But, I guess I just became more convinced, like, we should do more to tie to the story and celebrate and teach the elements of the story as opposed to Santa. So that's a long way to say is I don't do it, but we
Well,
like it. Yeah,
you see, and
whatever.
I went a different direction. Maybe it's because I'm a compromiser. That's my biggest weakness is I'm busy compromising all the time. Not really, but I kind of took the Kirk Cameron approach with Saving Christmas about redeeming traditions and looking at that. Which people might think that movie's cheesy. I really like that movie.
I didn't see
Uh,
that movie.
you haven't seen it? You got to see it. It's free
Redeeming
somewhere.
Christmas.
Saving Christmas, Kirk Cameron. And so what I kind of did is that we have the Santa tradition at our house, but we have Jesus in preeminence everywhere. But and then in my yard, just so that I do care. My wife like we had a little inflatable dog that blew up, because it was on sale at Target one year.
Hmm.
And so, the left side of my front yard was where the dog lived because he could not infringe upon the Jesus side of the yard where I have all Jesus.
Hmm.
The dog eventually died, and I'm like, we're not getting another dog. We finally got some wise men. Of course, the wise men can't be on the same side of the yard as Jesus either because they're not there yet. And so
Sure.
the game that I had when I first got my little wise men guys was that every day, like the week before Christmas, we should just kind of inch them over and see if the neighbors notice until they get there.
That's
But
awesome.
anyway, we don't actually do that because I'd block the driveway and we'd run over the wise men. But anyway, I've got the wise men on one side, I've got Jesus, and our stuff is not, at one point in time we had some reindeer, so I had the kind of the silly Christmas stuff on one side and Jesus on the other. But we've really ended up now with a wise men, Jesus, and lights because I do want to make Christ the priority. What I've taught my kids is Santa Claus, Saint Nicholas, it's a shortened form of Saint Nicholas, is the saint of the church. And then I usually give them the history. So, when they ask me questions about Santa, the North Pole, I say, well, the North Pole is something that people kind of have dreamed up. But the reality is, when we think of North, we think of up. And Saint Nicholas is a saint of the church, and we believe the saints of the church are living with Jesus in heaven. And Saint Nicholas pointed to Jesus. So all of my teaching on Santa in an official capacity has been Santa Claus is Saint Nicholas. Saint Nicholas was a defender of the divinity of Jesus Christ. And of course, the legend is that at Arius, Arius wasn't even at the council, but a representative of Arius spoke against the divinity of Christ, the Nicene Creed, and he got backhanded by Saint Nicholas for being indignant
Threw down.
about Christ's divinity. Whether that actually happened, what the seriousness of it, we don't really know. The legends of Santa are kind of fun, because then he is locked up, and one of the legends that is developed from his icon is that he holds the Bible. Because bishops supposedly had the Bible, and an angel appeared to him in jail and gave him his copy of the scriptures to validate that he did a good thing in smacking the Aryan representative.
I never knew this.
Anyway, fun things. The other legend of Santa is that he was a generous man. You remember where he was bishop of? I want to say Turkey, but I don't think it's Turkey, but it's over there. There was a man who had three daughters, and he was very poor and didn't have a dowry. And so St. Nicholas actually snuck gifts of dowry into their stockings, and they somehow found out that it was him, but to preserve their opportunities so that they could get married and they wouldn't have to have lives that were indecent, because without a dowry, prostitution was probably what they would be facing. So, did any of this happen? It's all legend, but there are some real Christian story legends that go back
Yeah,
that I think are. Oh, I think he's Malta. I want to say anyway. I could Google it, but
you could. I can Google it for you while you're
oh,
talking.
okay. Well, anyway, the guy is special. He's worthy of recognition, and I'm kind of saying like saints are a good thing, and we should have. I don't pray to the saints. I don't venerate the saints, but I think the idea that our God is a God of Isaac, Jacob, and Abraham, not the God of the dead, but the God of the living. That those that have gone before us that are in Christ are living with God. And so I think that's a way maybe to redeem Santa. So as the questions come in, I want my kids to never be able to look at me and say, "You told me Santa is real and that these are the things that are happening." Really, what I've always told them is Santa is Saint Nicholas, and Saint Nicholas is known most for defending Jesus, and then I tell them about that. And so when we play all the games and all of that, as the kids kind of grow out of it, they've seemed to be less uptight than I was as a child, and it's worked out well. And we don't
Yeah.
have to be the weirdo kids that don't believe in Santa, that tell all their friends at school that Santa isn't real, and then all your neighbors hate you.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah. That's I'm worrying about that. Right?
so that's kind of how we've done it at the Marquez house. If I've compromised, please pray for my soul. But
Yeah.
I've tried to do it that way.
I do think there's something to telling like the church history piece. That's a good piece to like to know that, to be able to explain that, to tell it. No, I'm a fan of the role that Saint Nicholas played in the church council that way, and how he threw down. I think that's a good story to remind people about like what the real guy was like. So I think there's value in that, in telling who he really is. Let me ask you this though. Okay, as we kind of just talk through this, at the end of the day, is there really any real issue with doing it this way, like celebrating? I guess I will put a little bit deeper like this: Christmas. To celebrate Christmas, do you believe that there's a proper way to celebrate Christmas, and whether we even have to celebrate Christmas? I know that sounds terrible. I love Christmas. I'm not saying don't celebrate. I'm not one of those people, but like celebrating Christmas. My light went out. There you go. Didn't pay the electricity bill. No, I'm on a timer in here. So my life, you're watching the video. I got to fix this timer. It goes off way too early.
It
All right, keep
actually
going.
it feels like Christmas now, though. All of a sudden
The
it
lights.
was the Linus spotlight from the Charlie Brown Christmas that just happened. It was good.
But talk to me. What do you think about like the actual
Yeah.
like celebrating a Christmas?
So, going back a few years when I kind of was looking into Catholicism and church history, even though my degree does not qualify me to speak on such matters.
Yeah, shut
Yeah.
up.
The thing that I think that is important is to recognize that in the New Covenant era, the church has developed traditions, and that there's nothing wrong with these traditions. If I could take a pagan holiday and Christianize it, and I was a political leader, I would do it in a heartbeat. I think that that's not us adopting paganism. It's taking back. Every
Yeah.
day is the Lord's Day. So I'm okay with Christmas. I also love the idea. I believe the very first Hanukkah was on the 25th of December when I was looking at my research a while back.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
People, you got to be careful on what you read on these things because people want to say things that they can't really prove. So you got to be careful. But
There's a lot of that stuff too. Like, yeah, the people find this stuff. There's like one reference to something, and the next thing you know, it just gets perpetuated.
yes. And then they find some sort of Talmudic reference from the fourth
Yep.
century AD and they read that back into the Bible. And it's just, okay, come on, people.
It's not good.
Got to be careful. But I think it's okay. And I think it's good. Is it mandated? Absolutely not. But I'm with you that there's something about Hanukkah and the light and Jesus as the light of the world coming at, he probably didn't come at that time, but celebrating him as the light of the world at this time it is a perfectly good time to celebrate
Yeah.
his birth. And so I just think the church decided to do this way, and we developed a pretty universal tradition of the timing. And I think that's good, and it does have roots into to the history of God's movement through Israel as well. So it's good. I don't think the Bible tells us we don't have to celebrate the feasts anymore, but it doesn't mean that we shouldn't recognize what they were and
Yeah.
why they were done. And it doesn't forbid the celebrating of them, but if they become idolatrous in some sense, then yeah. And I think that the Christian holidays can become idolatrous as well. And so we just it's helpful to think through these things. I guess one of the things that I like about celebrating Christmas is that there are ways that this unifies us with the church at large, and it does preach to the community, which is why I think the community wants to commercialize it and sideline Jesus. But when I used to do evangelism with our church, we used to hand out prayer books at Christmas and at Easter. And people are very open at Christmas to receive your little prayer book on Jesus and God bless you. Can I pray for you? At Easter, they're very hard. The Christ on the cross is much more divisive than the baby in the manger. So not
Yeah.
I think there's theological reasons for that, but people are open because they can't detach Jesus from this wonderful Christmas season, and it is an opportunity for the gospel. So let's take advantage of it. But if someone doesn't celebrate Christmas, I don't think they're sinning, but I do think there's value to it. The other thing that I've got videos on this going back on Advent. We're doing it wrong to some degree. The way it was set up is that this is a season of kind of giving up things and fasting and preparing our hearts for Christmas, which began the 12 days of Christmas up until celebrating the wise men at Epiphany. And so, that's another thing. For a while, I was like, maybe we should lower our Christmas stuff and then try to move the whole society over to celebrating Christmas beginning on the 25th and moving forward. That's a lost cause to try to move the whole world
Yeah.
that way.
We
But
got to start that on the 31st of October or 1st of November. Bring it. Let's do it.
I'm for it. But I don't know. What do you think? Like, because we actually
only
don't
reason
see exactly the
yeah.
same on this.
Well, I think the only reason I say that is at the end of one of the reasons I'm not a hardliner on like why I'm not like a hardliner on the Santa piece is at the end of the day, there are no biblical commands to celebrate Christmas, right? The church has always celebrated the resurrection of Christ. Easter has always been a part of that. I mean, and that's built into the week, right? Technically, every Sunday is an Easter celebration, right?
Yep.
But so I'm not. We're not commanded to have to celebrate these like we would in the old covenant. But I think it's valuable. I think there's so much value in doing it, just like you had said. I think it's also value in doing it because just like the old covenants, they reinforce the story. And my caution to anybody who's going to do it is make sure that you reinforce the story. And so my problem generally is if we just only let the cultural piece be what we do and we don't bring it back to why we do what we do. That's my issue. So at the end of the day, how you want to celebrate it, if you want to have you want to do whatever you want to do. I know people got all sorts of Christmas traditions based on where you live or whatnot, Santa, all that kind of stuff. I just think you got to make sure that the story is tied back to what the purpose is. And that's where I land because there's a lot of freedom in Christ to how I want to celebrate, whether I celebrate it all. So I don't think you can be a hardliner. I don't think there's any place to be a hardliner. I think you're absolutely right too. We can take things that would belong to the culture and make them make them ours, not syncretistic, like where we see
Yep.
a lot of times, like there's a lot of holidays that are pagan holidays that just simply have like a Christianized face on them. You'll see that in specifically areas when the Catholic Church has done a lot of these little things where it's really a pagan holiday that they like. I remember talking to a missionary from Peru where they talk about they have this big holiday, and he says they bring out the saints of their graves and they parade them around. Said what is the truth is that in those sarcophagus are actually the old it's the same group that they used to pull out for this pagan holiday, and then they just switched it and just said, oh, it's a saints related thing, right?
Yeah.
So I'm not talking about that, but I'm just talking about like we can redeem all these holidays and make them for the Lord. But how do you do that? So, I mean, like I said, I like the
Yep.
stuff. I love watching the Santa movies. I'm not against that. I had a teacher growing up. I was just telling staff before coming in here. I had a teacher that when I was growing up did not like even talking about Santa. This is at one of these like little mini Christian schools, and she didn't like us talking about Santa. She said because you can change the letters of his name, it can be Satan, and so we weren't allowed to play Secret Santa. We were allowed to play Secret Snowman, and that's a little bit too much for
Yeah.
me, you know. Santa, like I said, there's a real history of who the guy was, right? He's a real person. Um, and I'll say, look, I don't know, man. I'm not like a huge fan of the like Santa bowing before the mangers pictures and stuff like that too. I think that can be a little cheesy on some of that stuff. But like I like the you look up a picture of what a real Saint Nicholas was. Like who he was, what he looked like. That's good. But I think he would be mortified that he takes center stage and Christ doesn't on these
Right.
stories too. So, anyways, that's it. I've probably said this so many times on this, but you could probably not hear it enough. I think we should try to find ways to say, what is my food? How does the food tie with it? Whether
Mm.
you do it on like you and I, we're busy on Christmas Eve and Christmas Day. Like, there's a lot of times where it's like we have to kind of shift things around on what day we do it or whatnot. But, like, do my food. So I have a way to like tell the story with the food that we eat. Do I have a way to tell the story with how I decorate or something like that? Like, I do think these are specifically Christian, and we should make there should be some strong Christian elements that pervade all and have some fun with it too.
Right.
Have a
Right.
great time, play some game. I'm gonna throw this one. I don't think there's anything wrong with a Christmas tree. Every Christmas, can I just say this? I don't know about you. Every Christmas, I usually get a church member or a
Yeah.
church attender send me something about the pagan roots of the Christmas tree. And like I think one time, so if you flip it over and you look, it points to some fertility thing. Like, I'm sorry, I can't get there, right?
Yeah.
I'm not.
Well, and
Uh,
and just, it's so loose because if you just, okay, well, I celebrate a Christmas tree in honor of Saint Benedict who went and chopped the tree down that they were
yeah,
worshiping.
I
And so
like
the
that
Christmas
one.
tree is a chopped down tree that robs them of their sacred tree, and we use it to decorate our house for Christ.
That's a good.
You can always
Let's hijack that and combine them all together.
yeah,
That's
well,
a good.
and that's the part because you're grasping at straws here, and the reality is that it's a beautiful thing. You put the tree in the house, you get your ornaments on it. Again, you need to see Saving Christmas because he's got some ideas on that as well about taking the fruit from the garden and the ornaments look like fruit, and we're putting it back. And it's kind of in Christ, things are restored. I'm sure that's not historically why we have a Christmas tree. But the reality is that I have never set up a Christmas tree saying secretly this is our way of remaining pagan. No, under my Christmas tree growing up, there was always a manger. That's the reality. Um, but yeah, the syncretism is something we should be careful about. I do think that a lot of what's in Christmas actually is very Christian. And so it's not hard as a parent to do a little research, do a little digging, prayerfully look at it. You may have to chop some things out. I think there's a lot of conscience issues that are associated with this that maybe Elf on the Shelf is a bridge too far. Um, you know,
I don't
uh,
even know that. I've never done it. What for those of us at home who have not, like me, legitimately, I have seen that there's a little movie. Is it just that he's a guy who sits and tells you what you've done wrong and what's the purpose of that?
well, I think it's all commercial. I haven't seen the movie. The movie came out after,
I think
it
it's
was.
just they're like little shows on Netflix or something like that.
Yeah,
Like,
yeah, my
what's the
kids have watched them.
theme?
I probably should watch them because they've watched them. Here's the way I really see it is Santa. Saint Nicholas resides with Christ in heaven, but essentially his work of generosity now is supported almost by an angelic army of elves. And so the elf comes to report back to Santa how we're doing, because he's over the sphere of rewarding those things. Well, of course, that's Christ's job, and Saint Nicholas isn't the one that's really in charge. But the elf is almost basically he's reporting on us. He's reporting on the kids. Hey, are you doing right? So I
Hmm.
can go, because Santa has a book, and that apparently needs to be informed by whatever you name your elf. Um,
Yeah, keep going. I got something I was going to say after this, so
Oh,
go.
also, St. Nicholas is the Bishop of Myra, which is in the southern province of Turkey. So, not Malta. I was mixing that up, but Turkey was closer to the right.
You
Anyway,
said Turkey first, man, so I'm going to
I should have
say
stuck it. Yeah, never change your first answer. You test takers, finals week. Yeah. Anyway, yeah, it's a little goofy, but my youngest loves it. Every morning he's, wait, where's the elf hiding? And then of course, there's always a couple days, that the elf doesn't move because those that move him forget. Terrible parenting. I'm sorry, but then we just blame the kids for something they did wrong because, by the way, we should put a disclaimer on this one, maybe at the beginning that this one shouldn't be watched with little kids because we're crushing dreams right here. Uh,
Exactly.
anyway, the reality is that, yeah, you've got these things, and maybe as you prayerfully think about this, and I think the best thing is be intentional, be prayerful about it. You may have to say, nah, we're not doing that one. We'll do something. We won't do all things, or maybe we're just going to cut this out. But be informed in your own conscience, and don't just grab some weird YouTube video that isn't really grounded in history. It's grounded in kind of suspicion, which you get a lot of that stuff. And then talk to your pastor about it, for goodness sakes. You've got a spiritual shepherd in your life. Ask him, because we're talking as pastors here. This is how I would talk to people. This is how we've done it. I don't know if it's entirely right, but if I ever saw my kid like bowing and praying to Elf on the Shelf, that guy's gone, you know.
You bring up some of this stuff, and I do think that sometimes in movies, right, the way that, and this is my frustration, this comes back to the Santa piece, right? I think there's an element of Santa that's fun, but I do think culturally, Santa is about the most that people are willing to like, even in movies. If you're gonna, we won't talk about God, but it's not a problem at Christmas time to like pray to Santa, right? Like people will send their notes to him, or they'll say, "Santa, save me, help me." Like there's this element of like this guy can help you. He can come in and save you because he's aware at Christmas.
Yeah.
As you were talking, I was researching because every Christmas I always listen to the I love the Chipmunks Christmas album. Diana hates it. So in my car I'll play it with the kids, right? And so as I'm playing it, of course there's the Here Comes Santa Claus song. And I will say, as I listen to it, like there's some I feel like I got some, like we're getting into a line of like the lore of Santa is something that I think begins to go very close. The way that American Christianity places him is a little far up there. Like, so one of the lines is this, right? Like, here comes Santa Claus, right down Santa Claus Lane. He doesn't care if you're rich or poor. He loves you just the same. Santa Claus knows we're all God's children. That makes everything right. So fill your hearts with Christmas cheer because Santa Claus comes tonight, right? And I'm like, yeah, like I get it,
Yeah.
right?
Or he
That
sees you when you're sleeping, he knows when you're awake, so we give him
yeah,
some
that's kind of
omniscient
stuff.
features
Like
and
exactly.
yeah.
So we've given him omniscience. We've given him some to some extent omnipresence as well. But like that other piece, right? Like that. I just can't get past the idea that, right? Like he doesn't care if you're rich or poor. He loves you just the same, and we're all God's children. I'm like, oh man, like just there's some language there that I'm like, let's let's not let's not go that far with him, right?
Yeah.
Let's pull him out of there, right? Let's knock him down a peg or two.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah, I hear you. I think now I will maybe just channel C.S. Lewis here with the famous letter of the woman who wrote that my son likes Aslan more than God. Is
mm,
this a problem? And C.S. Lewis writes back and says you don't need to be concerned. Everything that he loves about Aslan, he loves because it's true of God, right? He's perceiving who God really is through this lion in the story, and when you're dealing with children, That's why, I think it requires wisdom and just being careful, right? Because yeah, you're sensing things that need to be corrected. But if they love Santa because Santa loves them, and we bridge that gap of, Santa loved Jesus and Santa was a faithful preacher. It could be a bridge to helping us understand what they love about Santa. He gives gifts, but his gifts are temporal, but who gives real gifts is Jesus. So I think you can use that. At the same time, it's not a full green light. I think you're absolutely right. We've got to correct things like, but really what people love about Santa in our society, and we write about him, it's what we want to believe of God. And most of it's true if you have been redeemed in Jesus Christ. And the only thing I would say that about all of this stuff is that, nobody actually gets coal. Nobody actually gets the negatives. But in reality, there are people who are not going to be getting gifts for eternity. They're not going to be welcomed in to the eternal home. And
Yeah.
and I think that there's no judgment here idea of Santa maybe. But the old school Santa, there's coal. If you don't do what's right, you're going to be punished temporally.
Well, see,
So
I
I
think
can
that,
see, just
yeah.
just finishing out, that's where we've taken the actual historical character who was a godly man, and we've mixed it with this fantasy character, and that mixing doesn't always sit right either. And so you're trying to. This is where I have respect for those that just like, we're not going to do it because there's too many variables here to try to control, and it's just very confusing. Um,
I'll say, I think that there's a piece of what you're saying here too is people look at him as, and I think people use the kind of American thought about Santa as their way they look at God, right? He's always dishing out hugs. He's always going to dish out gifts. He's never going to judge you. He's never going to, like, you're always going to get, ain't no one going to get coal. There might be a threat of coal, but no one's going to get coal. It's always going to happen. I think that's what happens is we've let that shade and color everything. I will say this: we talk about Easter. We can talk about this too. Like, I
yep.
think it's so much easier. Like at the end of the day, you got like a bunny. That one's like, for some reason, I feel like that one's less of an issue, right? Because it's a bunny that brings candy.
Yeah.
And that's like, I think it's so much easier to like, I don't know why, large bearded man flying around on reindeer is so much more entrenched than like large bunny dropping candy at your house, right? Like one is simply to be like, yeah, that's stupid. We're not going to go with that anymore. Thanks for the candy basket. The other is very much like, I can't get rid of that. Like I need him, right? I need to have him here. So I don't know. I'm just processing all of this. But I agree with you. Yeah, that we need to take in the good, throw out the bad, make a corrective, teach. We should teach
Yeah.
at the holidays. This is part of what it's our job to do as families is teach the story.
Well, and one thing I'll say is, as my older kids have kind of gotten to a point. Really, my oldest is out of the Santa phase. My middle child, I think, wants to hold on to it, but knows deep down that it's not there. But he plays along with the youngest. But the oldest hears me talk about and how I answer questions and how I kind of deflect all of the crazy stuff and point it to Christ. And it's
Yeah.
a testimony that I think he appreciates. Well, what do we know about Saint Nicholas? I'll just take whatever question and I'll say, yeah, he was a wonderful man. He lived about this time, and you know what? He was a tough guy. If you deny Jesus as being God, which the Bible tells us clearly he is, this is the story, and it is kind of a fun thing that has turned into a teaching thing for him, and so there's redemptive things there. And I will say this: I think when we're trying as parents to do it God's way the best we can, there is some protective realities that God is on our side. And
Yeah.
if we really are working through it, we might not do it perfect. And I get to heaven, he says, yeah, you shouldn't have done it that way. But I covered you. I do think God does do that for us as long as we are really seeking his will and doing the best we can. I don't think God's against us. I think a lot of people aren't thinking through, they're not taking parenting seriously. And so they don't have that covering very well because they're not even asking the Lord, how do I do this? And so, that would be my biggest thing is, yeah, like you said, I think you summarized great. Take the good, throw out the bad, and instruct, but do it prayerfully before the Lord. And I think generally the good things are going to happen. Um, but yeah, anyway, did you ever see that Saturday Night Live skit with the church lady and Santa and
No.
I think it's Dana Carvey. church lady, and who else is dressed in red and runs around stealing the focus on Jesus? Is it Santa or is it Satan? Anyway,
Huh.
you should go YouTube that because that might be just really fun for your own experience.
Yeah. Hey, I should watch that one. I like Church. I like Dana Carvey.
Yeah.
So got to look at it. Well, hey, I got nothing else to add to this
Yeah.
one, man. This has been a fun little one, and it's a good way to probably close. I imagine we're probably not doing anymore to the end of the year. Um, but we need to come up with a new list. So give us what you want to hear,
Yeah.
what you want to talk about. Good stuff. We got more coming. Big plans for OTXNT for 2025.
That's right. And
I'm
Merry
done.
Christmas, Pastor
Merry
Ben.
Christmas. Yes,
All right.
absolutely. All right, you ready to close out?
Let's do it.
All right, let's do it. Here we go. May the Lord bless you and keep you. May the Lord make his face shine on you and be gracious to you. May the Lord look with favor on you and give you peace. All right. Thanks for watching. See ya. Take
Take
care.
care.